Hi, I'm Mary Greendale, and welcome to another edition of Just Thinking. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Brad Jackson, as in Dr. Brad Jackson, Superintendent of Schools for Holliston. Brad just mentioned to me that it's been 16 years since I first interviewed him, and that's a long run, and I think it's been a good run. So let's find out what Brad has to say about his experience here, where he's going next, and where he thinks we need to go next. So, Brad, good morning. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you too, Mary.
Are you all surviving okay? Yeah.
We are. We're doing a lot of remote working. I'm working from home, enjoying the short commute from my bedroom to my dining room, but still working hard, that's for sure.
You live in Wilmington, right?
I do.
Is that right? Yeah, so that is a long commute. Now, in your new job, will you be closer to home?
My new job is in the next town over, so it's about 5 minutes from home.
Oh, how nice. How very nice. And what school is that with?
It's Shawsheen Regional Vocational Technical High School. It's a 5-town vocational technical high school, similar to Keefe Tech, that serves the communities of Bedford, Burlington, Billerica, Wilmington, and Tewksbury.
Okay, all right. So, over the years in conversations with you, not necessarily on-air conversations, I've gotten the feeling that there's sort of a rub for you about traditional education, the talking head of the teacher or the classroom that just, kind of walks you through, and that you have this vision or whatever, that maybe there's something better. Maybe there are alternative ways for some situations. Do you think that you're attracted to this particular job because very often those vocational and technical schools offer somewhat different frameworks?
I think that's part of it. I think that all students benefit from real-world experience, whether they're going on to 4-year colleges or whether they're going on to work following high school. And I think there are certain trades that we certainly need people to fill. And skilled tradespeople, they're very hard to find, as anyone who who needs a plumber knows. So I think there's a place for both types of schools in our K-12 public education programming. And I think, I think this is is very consistent with the fact that I have tried to bring in some real world experience into the students' experiences in Holliston. Through project-based learning and through some of those efforts to get our students out into the real world and not make education artificial, but make it meaningful to each student.
That's probably based on your business background first. I mean, that's where you started, right? Rather than in education.
Well, I actually think it's more based on the fact that I remember I was a math geek in high school. And I remember sitting in trigonometry, just loving trigonometry, but asking the teacher, why do I need to know this? And the answer was, because you'll use it in calculus. And even when I was in 10th or 11th grade, I recognized just how ridiculous that answer was. And I don't think in many cases or in some cases, we've changed that thought process, that we don't question what we're teaching students. We just teach them what we've always taught them.
Interesting. So tell me how things are structured right now in terms of how you interface with the administrators and that sort of thing. I mean, what's day-to-day life like during this transition?
Well, here in Holliston, each of our building administrators are primarily based at home, and they are running the remote learning programs from each of their schools remotely, using a lot of these Zoom calls. Our principals meet with their teachers weekly. At least once or twice a week to review curriculum plans, to review remote learning plans for each grade to ensure they're consistent and moving forward. And then as a as a senior administrative team, all the principals and the assistant superintendent, business manager, director of technology and special ed director and we meet 3 or 4 times a week in Zoom sessions to manage the entire district and keep it moving forward. Working on a lot of projects like trying to stay ahead of the remote learning process and anticipate what the future needs are going to be. And now we've really in earnest begun to shift our thinking towards closing out the school year and doing such what things sound routine, but trying to figure out how to get the belongings of 1,400 students who go to Miller and Placentino, how to get them back to their families in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic takes a lot of planning and execution.
Yeah, my granddaughter picked up her stuff at middle school yesterday, and it was like, not that there were a lot of people all gathered together, but it was like a highly executed event where teachers were on the inside and students were on the outside, and people were, somebody was responsible for getting her stuff and going back and ferrying it back to the car and so forth and so on. It sounds like a lot. And when you start talking about the numbers you have in the little kids, yeah, good luck to you and the Red Sox.
A lot of logistics to figure out, and
Yeah.
things that frankly we've never had to consider before.
Sure.
Just if you think about what probably is the highlight of the spring, which was the class of 2020 townwide parade that took place on Sunday.
Absolutely.
If you think about the amazing amount of work it took to put the logistics of that parade together, between the school administration at the high school, Principal Bottomley, the Holliston Police Department, and the Holliston Fire Department, it was person weeks of effort just to do that.
Yeah, everything is, we're just trying to accommodate and try to make it as good as it can be. I think we're doing a great job. I want you to know. I think that parade meant a lot to so many people.
I think that parade was probably one of the brightest lights in Holliston since we went into shutdown as a community in early March. I was amazed at the number of people who were out and about and cheering the kids on, and the signs and the displays that families put out to honor the kids. It was such a Holliston event to show the community together, celebrating their students in such a unique way, to represent such a unique class and the trials and tribulations that they've gone through.
Indeed. And so now there are probably trials and tribulations ahead for Holliston and probably the school system you're going to as well. What are you looking ahead to for the fall for Holliston? What are your concerns? What would you say to the school committee going, or whomever succeeds you? Boy, here are the things I'd be concerned about.
Well, I think the first issue that every school district in Massachusetts is facing right now is what is the state of the virus going to be in middle to late August, and what type of restrictions are going to be placed on schools because of the state of the virus. And the frustrating piece for parents and administrators is that everybody wants a plan today, and they want to know what the fall is going to look like. And there isn't a human being on the planet who can tell us what the state of the virus is going to be in Massachusetts when we open school, on the days that we're scheduled to open school. So all we can do is plan for what's the most likely scenario. We expect to hear from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which we commonly call DESE, We expect to hear from them either the week of June 15th or by the latest early that next week. And they're supposed to be issuing guidelines for school districts around which they should begin planning for fall reopening. I have, to anyone who's, and that will basically take up most of the summer planning for the senior administrative team and the interim superintendent once he or she is hired.
When do you actually depart?
My last day is June 30th.
Wow, that's coming up very quickly.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, all right. Didn't realize it was quite that abrupt, and I'm sure it's not abrupt. It's just, who knows? I mean, some days I get up and think it's Wednesday and it's not.
It's coming on us quickly, yes.
Yeah.
And I have an office full of 16 years of accumulated stuff. You have any idea how many just thinking coffee cups I have in my office, Mary, just alone?
Well, it's good to have a collection. It's good
Absolutely.
To have a collection.
But you changed design so they're not even matching.
No, actually, see, Just Thinking didn't give out coffee mugs. We've always given out notebooks. It was Holliston Happenings.
Okay.
Holliston Happenings had their coffee cups. And I started Just Thinking on that show. So anyway, I've just been thinking a long time. Let me ask you, as far as Holliston is concerned, looking back, okay, 16 years, where you came from, not what you did before that, but where we were when you started and where you are today. Top 3 best things.
Well, I think Holliston has recaptured its fascination with innovation and with marching to the beat of a different drummer in education. When I came to Holliston, and as I'm leaving, the pride that Holliston has in its French immersion programs, its Montessori programs, is a source of great pride for the community, and really shows a community that seeks a non-traditional approach to education. And I think over the course of the past 5 to 6 years, we've been able to recapture that passion and really instill it into our teachers and into our community as we move forward into a new era of education. And I know that sounds kind of trite, a new era of education, but essentially, education was created long before these things were around, and it was created for students to understand facts and be able to recall facts. And now that facts are available at your fingertips, we have the opportunity to teach students to think and teach students how to be global learners and to understand the world around them and to collaborate and work collaboratively with other people. Those are the skills that I believe that will cause them to be successful. And whether or not they know that the Battle of Bull Run took place before or after Gettysburg is irrelevant.
Good thing, because I don't think I could tell you. But anyway, yeah,
but I could look it up.
Yep, but the Battle of Hastings, 1066.
1066.
Why do some things stick in your mind? Huh?
They all stick with you, don't they?
Some of them do. Unfortunately, the ones that I really need oftentimes just slip my mind. But at any rate, okay. So you think that I like your framing of that we've recovered our sense of innovation and looking for the non-traditional way, because I think that's true. I do think that there's a, I don't know, rock-ribbed kind of, it's not old school, it's just almost contrariness sometimes, I have to say, that, Holliston doesn't exactly march to its the normal drummer. So
I mean, you have to, I know it's hard to recognize, but As someone who came into the community 16 years ago, I mean, the uniquenesses of Holliston are extraordinary. There are very few communities that really, within the 495 belt, that really have a rural flavor to them. And Holliston does. I mean, if you think about the word suburban, um, I mean, most of the communities inside of 495 either have an urban flavor to them or and an urban culture, or definitely a suburban culture, which is less intimate. And Holliston still has retained its rural culture. There's a lot of open space in Holliston where other communities have really built up. There's Holliston still maintains close connections to its agricultural roots. I mean, there are a lot of high schools in Massachusetts, and Holliston is probably the only one inside 495 that has that has goats across the street from its high school. That's that is some part of what makes Holliston unique and has made Holliston an incredibly exciting and fascinating place to work.
What, as you look ahead, do you think are, if there are any, tell me there are none and I'll be very happy, but pitfalls ahead, irrespective of what happens in terms of the format of school, because obviously the format of school is not something we're going to get to dictate too much about, you know, however many kids can go into a classroom at a time and all that kind of thing. But as you're moving ahead with the shortened revenue, or you know, likely to be fewer dollars and that kind of thing, hopefully that won't come to pass, but if it did, what are we looking at? What do we have to make sure we hang on to as the core, just in case we're hitting some sort of bumpy spell?
That's a really hard question. Holliston has, Holliston, like many communities, is really at a very precarious place in its history as it marches towards change in education. And this pandemic certainly could not have, and the economic downturn that it caused couldn't come at a worse time. And Holliston and other communities are actually faced with, in the short term, rising expenses in the face of declining revenues. And that terrifies me. Holliston is, while I have had more than my share of disagreements with the members of the Finance Committee, I will give them credit at this point in time that Holliston's conservative approach to finances is going to puts it in a position to better survive this potential economic downturn short-term wise than many other communities, because Holliston does have some substantial reserves upon which to call to help bridge the gap. But all in all, I think that, as Holliston continues to move forward, we need to continue to work to find ways to provide the educational services that we provide in as economically efficient way as possible. The property taxes that people pay in Holliston, people were complaining about them 16 years ago, and they have every reason to continue to complain about them. But that's one of the reasons why Holliston is so unique. Again, it is a rural community with excellent schools. Rural communities don't have high levels of industry upon which to rely for revenue. So you can't have a rural community with excellent schools without high property taxes. The mathematics doesn't work. So
right.
I think Holliston is going to have to continue to struggle to find its place in the future in terms of what type of community it wants to be, and at what cost.
I was thinking this morning of regionalization and maybe a different form of regionalization for some things. If you're doing something online, does it matter if the teacher's from Wilmington teaching Holliston? You know, it really doesn't matter. I'm wondering if there's a way that eventually some of those services will be arranged differently so that you can almost have a menu of classes that would be available. I don't know, and we don't need to,
Yep.
you know,
I think those are the things.
You know, just the thinking.
You're just thinking.
I'm just thinking. I do it all the time.
I think that is actually, I think that is the future. I think that I think that one of my concerns is that we can't confuse the remote learning process that we have been using. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Remote learning has not, in its current form, does not and never will replace the personal relationships and face-to-face relationships that are essential to good quality instruction. Teachers need to make personal connections with their students, and they need to personalize their learning to the students' interests and to their particular circumstances. And that requires a personal interaction. And this medium does not, has barriers to that relationship building. And so I don't think anyone I think everybody would recognize that the days when computers will replace teachers, I think that remote learning has put that issue to bed.
Yep.
And but we can't, as I said earlier, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are places where we can find efficiencies through technology, and this is very dependent on ages and abilities to work independently and to be motivated independently. But we've got to continue to regionalize that type of thinking and to share resources and hopefully one of the benefits of this shutdown has been that people do recognize that we don't always have to be in our office to work. And we don't necessarily always have to be in school to learn. And with that concept as a nugget, we do need to examine our practices statewide to find efficiencies, because this, teachers deserve, I think the other thing we've learned over the course of this shutdown is that teachers deserve every penny they're being paid. And, and that will continue. I think there's much possibility that we have moving forward for those things.
I think so too. I think that there's some very encouraging aspects of this, and I do look at it as a crossroads, but I honestly look at it as an opportunity. I feel very badly for people who are teachers who have felt just so cut off from their students, who feel that they don't have the same ability to interpret what's going on with their kids because they're not in the same room. I know that for my granddaughter, that very first, those early 2 or 3 weeks when, oh my God. And I live in their house. So unlike years past, when I lived on my own, I wouldn't have seen any of this. But just what's going to happen at the end of the year? I'm not going to see such and such a teacher ever again. I'm not going to have a yearbook that people write in to look back on. I didn't say goodbye to the nurse, whatever, you know, those kinds of things that teachers and all of those professionals that work in the buildings count on those connections, count on those experiences to help those kids grow. And it's not only the teachers that sit in the classrooms. Sometimes it is the nurse or it could be the whoever, you know, I was going to say the sexton, but schools don't have sextons. But anyway, so the point is that there are a whole lot of people in there that create a network that supports those kids. And so from my perspective, this online learning requires that there has to be some sort of network that replaces that. And that's not easy because families work and not all families are suited to this and not all families are willing to do it. So it's going to, I think that's where the challenge is going to be, is where you get that sort of network of support for any opportunities that exist for online learning. It reminds me when I went to Syracuse University, the first time I ever went to an amphitheater for a lecture. It was like, I came from my graduating class was 67. I went to a all-girls school in the city of Springfield. It was an itty-bitty school. And I'm sitting in there with hundreds of students. You know, this guy's down on the floor, could barely see him. I would not have recognized him if I'd seen him anywhere else. Speaking over a microphone and so forth. And I thought, how do you ever, you know, ask a question or whatever? And then I discovered that there were other classes that were partnered with those, that were symposiums, that were where you would then go in and take that material and kind of, you know, digest it and have a conversation about it. Then I got to like that model. I got to like that experience. Maybe there are things that we can, you know, borrow from those situations. Let me just ask you too, is there anything that you would advise the upcoming, whether it's the superintendent or the school committee or the parents or whatever, what advice would you leave for us? This is sort of your opportunity to write that script that says, you know, my last will and testament for Holliston.
You know, it's funny. I struggle with this because I'm leaving in the middle of a very unique time where frustration on the part of our community is at a very high level. And some, if not much of that frustration seems to be directed at the schools. Between the George Floyd issues and schools aren't doing enough to instill an talk about white privilege and anti-racism, to we need to get our kids back to school. Why won't you put them back in school? There's a lot of people's frustrations with things that are going on outside of school right now seem to be directed towards our school system. My basic two messages to any community is, please try to look at the glass half full as opposed to half empty. The Holliston teachers and administrators and paraprofessionals and secretaries and bus drivers and all the amazing people work incredibly hard and are very committed to your children and deserve most often deserve the benefit of the doubt. Holliston is a very demanding community, and that is good, but those demands have to be tempered with reality. And so I encourage this community to continue to hold its schools accountable for growth and improvement, to continue to hold your students accountable for their growth and improvement, but at the same time recognize that schools are a social place where these personal interactions and relationships need to take place. And and don't forget the social emotional growth of our children. It is not just about academic growth. It is about them growing as human beings, to grow in a way that doesn't harm them and doesn't cause anxiety and other mental health illnesses and challenges, or that can lead to drugs and other dependencies. So take the long view.
Mm-hmm.
I one of the things I learned as an educator very quickly is that um, that we look at students along a 13-year continuum, and parents have a much shorter window. And so, for example, right now, parents are very concerned about academic loss due to remote learning. And I, um, I am willing to bet that 2 years from now, they'll look back and say, oh, we survived that. My students where they should be,
Mm-hmm.
everything is back on track. And as hard as it is for parents to take the long view, I think the long view is important, because childhood is a journey, and cherish it and enjoy them while they're children.
Absolutely. Good message. So as you look ahead for yourself, what are you hoping to, what's this next stage about? What are you hoping to do?
Well, this next stage is actually came about very unexpectedly, um, and really just is a matter of it was really just kind of I guess unexpectedly is probably the best way to describe it. I have uh, my plan, personal plan, has always been that I will be retiring as a superintendent in about 2 years from now. And that was my plan here in Holliston, that I was going to work until July 30th of 2020, which is about 2 years from now, and retire from Holliston. And this local school district near me had an unsuccessful superintendent search and was looking for someone to kind of fill the gap for 2 years. And so I thought that the opportunity to learn some new things, the opportunity to serve a school district that impacts the community where I live and and frankly, the opportunity to spend more time with my family and more time pursuing personal interests, as opposed to spending 75 minutes one way in a car every day, was kind of a perfect storm of opportunity that came up. So my intention is, and I've been quite clear with my new employer, my intention is to work at Shawsheen for 2 years to guide them through this transition period, as they search for a permanent superintendent in the 21-22 school year, to replace me in 2 years. So that is those are really those are my short-term plans. I had every intention of retiring from Holliston, and had visions of opportunities to spend my last year here, saying goodbye and connecting with people that I've worked with in the community over the course of my final year here, and closing out this chapter in my life. And it is with a great deal of sadness that I find myself unable to do that. And Holliston is a community that will stick with me forever, and is a place that has a very special place in my heart. And I really, if I have any regrets, it is that I'm unable to transition out of a place where I've put 16 years of blood, sweat, and tears into, and built some amazing personal relationships with, and have to do it through Zoom.
Pretty much the same experience as the students have gone through, but they'll still be back to the same school system one way or another. You know,
it is very similar. It's very similar to the experience that our retirees are feeling.
Yeah, your high school students.
And our high school seniors are feeling. But I don't suppose that I'm not suggesting they're equal or worse or the same. It's on an emotional level, there are some similarities though.
The one similarity I think is producing some sadness. So that goes without saying, I guess. Well, Brad, I do wish you the very best, first of all, in terms of trying to wrap things up here boy, you cannot put this into a neat little package with a bow on the top, because you don't even know what size package to look for. But I'm sure you will do the very best that you can in passing on the torch to whoever helps with the transition.
Absolutely.
And I do wish you the very best. I wish you good health. That is above all. If you're healthy, you'll be able to do anything else that you really want. So go forth.
Thank you.
All righty. Take care and be well.
Take care. You as well.
Thanks. All right, folks. Well, that's a bittersweet moment. We'll be saying goodbye to Dr. Jackson at the end of the month. So next time, I don't know what we're talking about next time. It depends on what I start to think about. But anyway, you all be well too, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye.